Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with author and marriage and family therapist Kristen Mosier. Kristen, originally from the Bronx in New York, chatted about her life and career, and in particular, the change of pace she experienced when she moved to New Jersey. Her new book, Restless, How to Stop Living an If Only Life, challenges how so many of us are living our lives, always chasing the next thing and never truly satisfied with where we are in ourselves. She speaks about how to be more present in our lives and how we can all make better decisions when we use our own inner compass by adhering to our personal values. While society has us programmed to keep pushing forward, we need to be sure that this doesn't have us permanently restless. Let's hear from Kristen. Kristen Mosier. Have I pronounced your name correctly?
It's Mosier, yeah.
Mosier. Where does that name originate from?
It's my husband's name, and it probably originally somewhere along the line was Mosier, and has become the American Mosier, but I like it when the doctors still call me Mrs. Mosier.
What was your maiden name?
My maiden name is Mucci. Mucci, yeah. And that's Italian, but again, always was mispronounced. So I said, okay, I'll take his name.
Yeah, you were happy to swap at some point. Yeah. Well, it's lovely to have you on the podcast. You're the author of a new book called Restless, How to Stop Living in an If Only Life.
That's right.
I like that. But even more interesting, I like the fact that you're a marriage and a family therapist. So that might explain a few things to the listeners. And so what I'd like to do is join the dots and figure out why you've written this book. But before we get into all of that, I'd love to learn a little bit about you.
Okay, sounds great.
So who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Okay, let's see. I'm Kristen Mucci, and I originally am from New York, so I'm a definite New Yorker at heart. I lived in the Bronx when I was young, and then in the suburbs, and I sort of spent a lot of my time in New York City too, and so definitely a New Yorker at heart, which means I'm kind but honest too, and I'll always tell you how it is. But I grew up in a pretty standard suburban household, and kind of now we're hearing all this stuff about have a 90s summer. I don't know if it's also happening out by you too, but that was my childhood, this 90s summer where we just got to be free and play, and just that's sort of where I started, this little restless girl who was always a dreamer and always looking for the next adventure. And, that sort of propelled me forward on my path to now.
My mother lived in the Bronx.
Oh, she did? Oh, okay. Yeah.
They emigrated from Ireland like so many other people in the late 50s, and they were there for 5 years.
Okay.
She lived in Sedgwick Avenue.
Okay, I'm not super familiar. It's been a minute, but yeah.
And she connected with that place so much that our house, we named it Sedgwick. Mm-hmm. So I love that. She absolutely loved it. And they came back in 1963. She was there at a very interesting time when JFK was running for president. She went to see concerts, fundraising concerts, Martin Luther King, speaking, for the advancement of Black people. Yeah. She witnessed him speaking at those gigs. She went to the Rat Pack concerts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And she came over to me about 2 years ago, and she actually had the programs from the gig.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
When you see all the old advertisements. Yeah. And what's more, The following morning, there was a little write-up in, I don't know, the New York Times or one of the newspapers about the gig. And she has the cutout of that put in with the program.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a really exciting time. And like so many other Irish people, my dad's family started to claw at him and try to bring him back to Ireland. And her sister followed her out there. And they were kind of living with them for a while. So Mum returned on Valentine's Day heartbroken. She was leaving her sister and her sister's young children, who nearly became her children. She was brokenhearted. Fairly clear that there was conflict in the family because she did not want to return to Ireland and my father wanted to. And I think it was a case of that marriage was going to be kaput. You know, if they didn't do that together. So she came back with a heavy heart. And funnily enough now, she would say best decision. With the benefit of hindsight, she's so happy with that decision, knowing how her life has been since then. Now, her sister stayed there, so we have family there. My brother is out there. He's in New Jersey.
Great.
He's been there for 30 years and that. But she's very happy. But anyway, that's my side of things. So we have a little bit in common.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Yeah. And I think it's also just one of those interesting things. Like when you leave, I live in New Jersey now, and I only went across the river, but I still miss my New York City life, you know? And I think it's really, it becomes part of you, that city. It really gets under your skin. So I can imagine why it was hard for her to let go of.
Yeah, she absolutely loved it. So you were in the city centre, obviously.
I lived in the city for many years, but now I do live in New Jersey also, in the suburbs.
Yeah, so you commute into town. Because I know you see clients in both New Jersey and New York. Is that in person, by the way, or do you do that over Zoom?
Some in person, but I also, since COVID, I do a lot of online still. You know, a lot of people still find it very convenient to do. It makes it more accessible for a lot of people.
Yeah, less travel and finding parking spaces and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I miss it a little bit, but I still get to go to the office sometimes, part-time.
Tell me, what did your mum and dad do?
My mom, she was always the secretary at my school growing up, so I always got to see her very often. She is a Bronx girl at heart. She, still talks about her coffee and her, she's and then my dad, he worked at the same job from the time he was 17, at the same company, I should say, many different jobs, from the time he was 17 until the time he retired. It's an electrical company in New York City. And he, started as a chemist out of high school, and he left as, the vice president of engineering there. So he really kind of what careers used to be, he really embodied that. But, very standard middle class kind of. Everyone had dinner together, and it was, a very New York centric, but very nice childhood. Yeah.
Was he very career orientated, pushing up the ladder, senior jobs, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely put that work ethic in us. Like, I don't know. I bet he could count on, one hand how many times he actually ever called out of work, right? And he worked hard. He went back at 50 years old for his master's in his MBA, and he kept going. So he definitely instilled this work ethic in us of to continue to move on. And he also always he worked a lot. My mom was definitely the default parent at home, but he also appreciated culture and learning new things. And he always introduced us to, I think I went to the opera with him when I was a little kid. And we would go, whatever, if we could get free tickets to something, we would go to whatever it was and just kind of always experience. And food, he always wanted me to try new things. So he always had this, a very growth-oriented mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, and a bit of curiosity to try new things and everything.
Yeah.
Those words, work ethic, that's nearly a trait that we look for in people. And it's like, so Kristen, she's really good. She works hard. It's one of those things that we place on someone, isn't it? You kind of say, yeah, that's a good trait. And that's probably a standard. It's probably a way, yeah. Or maybe the opposite. Oh, he's a lazy so-and-so.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but a work ethic is something that we respect. And it's something we always put on the plus side of a character, don't we? We kind of look for that in a way.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's our culture rewards that as well. But I think it's also something that maybe we notice in somebody that feels like that we can go with them somewhere. It's like we'll see new things and we'll experience new things because they're going to keep growing and moving towards something.
And in your house growing up, what were the conversations around the kitchen table? Or were there conversations? Did the family get together for dinner at the evenings and at weekends and what have you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think we were by no means, reading poetry and super intellectual conversations, but we were talking about our days and what was going on at school and who were friends. We were we always talked about things in life and everything going on. And, I was definitely the dreamer in the family of always talking about what I wanted to do next and where I wanted to go. And they sort of humored me a little and kind of, oh, Christy's always, kind of looking to, what adventure does she want to go on next? I mean, they still kind of joke with me that way.
Yeah. And what were your dreams? I always say to people, when you're in the classroom and for whatever reason, the teacher has lost your attention and you're just in a different world, where would you go to in your head?
Oh, yeah, I did that a lot. I always was a writer from the time that I remember my second grade teacher, I would write all these little stories, probably not always paying attention in class and doing writing stories. But she really noticed it and was very supportive and always said I had a great imagination. I was always sort of making up stories in my head and kind of thinking about different adventures. So my dreams were also to write, but then also to have the adventures that I was writing about too.
And when you got a little bit older and you had to think, oh dear, I need to earn money on this earth.
Exactly.
So where did your head bend to at that stage, career-wise? Yeah.
So actually, it's funny because I had made this decision, I'm going to be a writer very early on. Every book that my parents had where they tracked my growth and everything, it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was always writer, right? And so I always knew that was where I was going. But then sort of reality of people being like, well, why don't you teach English and then you can write on the side? And they try and guide me. And I was young and I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I'm not just going to go write. I didn't even understand that you could just basically be a writer. I thought, how do you make money doing that really, right? And so I did go to college at first as an education major, but realized pretty quickly that actually it was great. My college that I went to, my university it got us in the classroom really early and we're able to observe. And I realized I don't actually want to teach. I want to be a writer. And so luckily I was able to switch at that point to journalism. And I finished my education in journalism. And then actually before I became a therapist, I worked for 10 years as a writer and an editor in New York.
Yeah, I knew that. I checked your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, got it.
So the different roles. That was a really good career spell. I think, again, from your LinkedIn profile, I saw you pretty much did that for 13 years, from 2000 to 2013 in different publications.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I did. I wrote for a lot of different, I randomly ended up in sort of a home decor, home construction niche. I wrote for home magazines and then I got a little restless doing that. And I wanted to change the subject matter. So I did this health coaching program where I did a year-long health coaching training. And I started writing about women's health. And that was my last job in editorial, was writing about women and health and wellness and, sort of reinvented myself in that job before I really jumped ship.
So the subject matter intrigued you, basically.
Yes.
So I'm all in. I'm going to stop writing about it. I'm going to be part of it.
Right, exactly. And, I did do some health coaching on the side where I would meet with people, and it was never about food. It was always about emotional stuff, right? It was always about what was going on in their lives. And I was really found myself so interested in that. And I also found that writing in the corporate world wasn't as fun as I imagined it would be. There was a lot of constraints and a lot of stress, and deadlines and long hours. And I always joked I felt like I was working in a magazine, but I felt like I was working in an operating room sometimes. It was pretty intense atmosphere. So I knew I wanted to make a switch.
So you find yourself in the world of therapy. And did you lock into a particular niche, or was it very general to begin with?
I actually went back to school for marriage and family therapy because I always knew I wanted to work with couples. I just always had a sense of, like I would joke, I just love love, like I was interested in it, and it kind of got me excited. And so I was looking at those programs because I knew that would be part of it. I do work with individuals too, but I would say I work with at least half couples now too. So from the beginning, I wanted to do that work. So I sought out a marriage and family therapy program and really learned in that specific way of how the teaching really is called systems, based, and it's how we function within systems. So that's not only in our relationships, but in our culture and in our, all the subgroups that we belong to as people.
What have you discovered working with couples?
I mean, that I would say maybe my biggest takeaway is the idea that most times, I wouldn't say all times, the person we're with is worth working on things with, that there's no fantasy of a better imaginary life somewhere out there, because every couple has issues. And if you have difficulties in one relationship, you're probably going to bring those same things to the next relationship. So to me, it's always worth it to work on the one that you're in, right? The fantasy that it's going to be all perfect with somebody else is so prevalent, but it's actually what I see in therapy is like, no, most of the time, like it's worth it to work on it with the person right in front of you,
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also when you unravel a relationship, as well as moving on to another one, the fact that you finish one, in particular if there's children or anything like that,
Yep.
you now have a very complicated life with lots of issues and challenges. So there's a big cost when you actually finish a relationship like that. And sometimes it's straightforward, just like breaking up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, whatever.
Sure.
But I think when family comes into it, then of course there's property and money and jealousy and revenge and, oh my God almighty, all of that. And the damage to other people, like the children and the partners. I separated myself when I was about 28, and absolutely, I know that could not have worked, and it was the right decision. But I do know, like I was married very young. It was like 22 or whatever, which is probably crazy. But the damage to the children, I'm pretty happy with all of my choices along the way and all that kind of stuff. But my huge regret, I would say, is damage that I caused to them. Maybe it was inevitable and there's nothing that I could have done there, but yeah, I think the damage to them is the one thing that I would say, that's...
Yeah, I don't believe a couple should stay together because of the kids, but I do understand the difficulty of, they go through it with you for sure, but I do think that that's part of their journey and that's part of their growth experience, and that, and we all in life have those times, but I do think, right, this belief that you should make it work no matter what is definitely not what I think. But I do think if you're a little bored or you're a little, kind of disconnected somehow, or, if you fundamentally have different things you want from life, that's one thing, right? Or there's arguments and emotional sort of warfare going on. I'm not saying stay at all costs. I'm saying, if you've been together long term and start to wonder, would it be more exciting with somebody else? And what am I looking for? Maybe that person would be more interesting to me. That usually, right? That's fantasy of this if only thinking that I write about.
And I think the way the world moves so fast now with everything else, I often think it's like going to a restaurant on the menu, and we feel like that about our relationships. Just pick something else off the menu. Why not? It's all a little bit easier.
Right.
In an Irish context where it would have been a very kind of religious society where, you couldn't divorce or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was very much a case of, well, you marry forever.
Yeah.
And there was a huge, huge cultural stigma about not being married anymore and breaking up. That put an extra pressure. I remember when I separated, my mother said to me, "How could you do this to me?"
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm I'm sorry. I wasn't really trying to do anything
I didn't realize.
to you one way or the other. But that was her view. And my God Almighty, it just hurt her to the core.
Absolutely.
And she was under no illusions as to that it wasn't a perfect relationship or anything like that, but still that was the way we kind of thought here. Ireland has moved on a little bit since then.
Good.
But we're talking, a very, very small window of time.
Small progress.
If you think about it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the shoulds, right? I think there's all these shoulds on us, like things should be a certain way, right? And you should get married and stay married and have kids and be so happy and love your life and be so grateful for it, right? But it's not always that easy.
Yeah. And I do think, and I was looking at some of the things that you've written, and that idea that we change and evolve as people. And often as a couple, maybe you don't change together and you change in different ways and you want different things. It's easy to have a lot of things in common when you're doing the same school exams.
Right.
And then as you move on, and in my case, I would have been very career orientated.
Yeah.
That's where I saw the goals and all that kind of thing. So I'm curious with you that the work of providing marriage and family therapy, how did that evolve into, I'm going to write a book called Restless?
Sure.
So where did the idea come from? Where did you think I need to write this book?
Well, I think there's a couple ways that it came about. One is what we're talking about here, this seeing couples and moving in different directions and really realizing that the restlessness was more of a lack of sharing their internal goals and the things they wanted from life and creating this shared vision together. And I was seeing a lot of restlessness in couples in therapy. But then also I would say a lot came, and in the book, it's a lot about my own personal journey too, of just feeling restless. And then also, in the beginning, I would feel guilty that I felt restless because I had so much. I'm very privileged. I come from, a background as a, white woman who grew up in a, middle-class family. And so I knew I had, I was aware that I had everything I needed. And it was a privilege to want more. And so then I would feel guilty about questioning whether, if I had taken a different path, or maybe that wasn't the right decision, or if only I could get this job, then I would be happy. Or if only I could do this, and I started to then feel like I was, so I would feel guilty. And then I also felt like I was missing out on, I think the more I got immersed in life. I got married, I moved to the suburbs, I had children. I would then feel like I was missing, I wanted to go back to the city, or I wanted to change a job. And then I would feel like I was missing out on the present moment, right? I was missing out on how my life was unfolding in front of me. And why couldn't I just be content, right? And so as much as it was for the people I was working with, it was also I wrote this book over 7 years. So it was a 7-year journey of figuring out, really understanding what restlessness is, where it comes from, why I might feel this way. And then also what am I actually missing here, and getting that component back,
Did you figure out your own restlessness, did you?
I think I did, I think it's funny because I'll read the book now and not relate to certain parts anymore because I feel like I've come a long way in it. But I think when I started to explore, it was also very validating to realize that there's a lot of reasons that we feel restless as people. Not only is we evolutionary, primed to grow and seek and find new things and get, sort of make new worlds, right? So that drive is there, right? That growth oriented drive that it stems from. And that's a really positive thing. And we don't have to resist that. But I think when I looked at, some other factors, so not only the cultural factors, but my own personal relationship factors, or as an adult, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I realized that neurologically, that's probably part of the picture here, right? That this sort of seeking and move forward momentum, right? And just really started to understand that there's a lot of reasons why I might feel that way. And that doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it true that I could feel grateful for what I have and also want more, crave more, fear, strive, be growth oriented too. And it's not a bad thing, right? So now I could let go of that guilt a little bit too.
So you can do both.
You can do both. You can continue to move forward and also be present for what's happening right now, more present.
Okay, so being really honest, is this book your big therapy session with yourself?
Pretty much. I mean, pretty much. It's a little vulnerable to put out there because there is a lot about my own journey in there, right? And so I think it is my experience. There's definitely, I learned from my clients too, and witnessing people in relationship and learning this, what I used in the beginning with even couples therapy or any therapy like that. If only I had that, usually doesn't actually make you happy in the end. Even when you achieve it, you're not always happy when you achieve what you want, right? So I was able to learn from my clients too in the process.
We're programmed, I think, to look for more and to try and achieve more. Mm-hmm. Aren't we from the very, very beginning? You were talking about the teachers in school and your writing. And I'm sure if you did well, you get an A, you come home and your parents, how are you getting on? It's all about targets and aiming for this.
Sure.
We're programmed to be the first, get that job, get into college. It's like we live a world of purpose, but it's kind of set out. There's a path from the very beginning, getting the house, getting the college degree, getting the bigger car, getting the bigger job. Absolutely. And fully, you get that job, you win that big client. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yay, this is amazing. And the following day, you're like, okay, whatever.
What's next?
Yeah, right, no, I have to do the work.
Yeah. And you could actually, neurologically, like you can see from the perspective, if you look at the body, that we get dopamine, which is, that feel-good hormone, right, is like, we historically thought of it as coming from the achievement. But actually, in the last 10 years, the research shows that it actually comes from the pursuit, right? And so this wanting phase. So the wanting is where we feel that motivation and that fuel. So when we get there, it can sometimes feel like a letdown. So if we don't enjoy the journey, then what's the point, really?
It's funny, we're in the lucky position of being able to buy a summer house a couple of years back, and it's right on the coast. It's in a place called Crookhaven, which is in the very southwest of Ireland. It's called Ireland's Teardrop. So at a time when a lot of people would have emigrated from Ireland on the ships, it's the last piece of land they would have seen before they head to America. It's by the sea, very rugged. Thankfully, with broadband and everything, we can work from there, which is really cool. But you feel yourself changing when you're in that place. The environment is actually quite good for you. Now, the particular location, obviously there's a lot of people go there during the summer, but people we meet down there, they seem to like it more when it's not busy. They enjoy the remoteness. You would see a lot of retirees there, people from England, some people from Germany. People have discovered the place. Mm-hmm. And even myself, I feel myself that I changed. And the reason I'm kind of saying this to you grew up in New York, which is like, I live in Cork City. It's a great city, the second city in Ireland pretty much. Dublin is that busier, more hectic place. We have offices in Dublin and Cork. When you go to the office in Cork, you get your cup of coffee in the morning, you amble around, you bump into someone on the South Mall. It might take you 10 minutes to get from one side to the other. You have a chat with Kristen, you've met her and this, that and the other. If we bump into you next week, we'll probably stop again. In Dublin, when you go to the office, you can see people with the cups of coffee, but there's intent in their marching, in their walking. I need to get there quicker. So there's no stopping. And obviously New York is that on steroids.
Absolutely.
So being in that environment probably fuels that particular issue as well, I imagine.
Well, actually, I think it kept my restlessness at bay in some ways because I had so much stimulation at my fingertips. So I wasn't at a loss for that excitement, right? I was living in the middle of it. And so I could leave my apartment and then go to take my son to the park, and there would be like a spontaneous puppet show just happening down the block, and it would be exciting, And so it was quite an adjustment for me when I moved to the quieter. We live in a lovely town on a river. It's very quiet and beautiful, but I didn't have that access. It felt kind of isolating, and really, I think it's different when you're by the sea, that being able to be present with nature and whatnot. But here I was like, it's not an escape. It's just like, now this is my life and I miss that person. And I realized for a long time, I would be like, I want to get back to the city. I'm going to go back to the city. My husband promised me, like, when the kids graduate, we're going to move back. This is better for them all there right now. And, kind of was always longing for that. And when I wrote the book, I kind of went through this process where I was like, what did I feel when I was living in the city? So I felt excited and stimulated and kind of always looking forward. And I was like, I need more of those feelings. I don't need to move back there. I just need to bring in more opportunities for adventure or whatnot here where I am. And maybe I have to work a little harder at that. But so I think when we long for something, right, it's not always that we're longing to do that thing, but really how we felt when we were doing that thing,
Okay. How long did it take you to settle in New Jersey? Or have you?
Oh, I know, 6 years. 6 years. I think it took me a really long time to, when you live in the city, you also have a lot of your like-minded people and you're sort of in it. And it was an adjustment to move to a new community. But I think once I was really able to look at the things that were really wonderful here, because there's so many wonderful things, and really understand what it is I needed, not to go back, but maybe I needed to take some more adventures on a weekend or go explore something new or take one of my kids somewhere new, then I was able to get more of that and be here and be present with what I have. But it did take me quite a while, I would say.
Is that environment, that chaotic, busy environment, is that bad for people, do you think?
I think it depends on the person, right? I think, and for me, it was like I lived for so long in that it felt comfortable to me, But I think it depends, right? You can be present wherever you are, whether your environment is chaotic or whether not. It's a matter of like how we're feeling on the inside, I think, versus what's happening on the outside. And that's really the part of the book is talking about how to become more present in our lives.
So, the normal way, we're highly charged. We're trying to achieve the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Oh, yeah. And it's kind of the expectation.
Absolutely.
Kristen, you've been there for a while. Have they not promoted you, or what's going on? Or, you've been living in that small apartment for a while, Kristen. Maybe you should be getting a house for you and the family, or, you've had that car for a while. The way the world works. So we have a culture of if only. And how do you fight against that? Because I know in the book that's effectively what you're trying to solve. That's the puzzle.
I think you're right. It's our culture very much pushes us to the next thing. What is the next thing? I mean, like you said, you get a job and now you get the promotion and now you become, the raise and you have, even if you get married, when are you going to have a kid? And then you have the kid and when are you going to have the next kid, right? And we're always propelled forward by these cultural expectations and sort of this laid out path for us, right? And it's very easy to lose sight of our internal compass and what we actually want. And I think, and what I talk about in the book, is that a lot of times restlessness arrives because we've lost that connection with what we really value and what we really want from life. And we sort of are now on this path that we've been, just kind of accidentally on, or we were expected to be on, or we fulfilled some role that we were raised. There's a lot of reasons that we're on a certain path. But if we don't pause to say, like, is this the path that I want to be on? And these are my values, the things I really hold important in life. And am I living in accordance to those? Then we're going to feel restless if we're not,
But do we know those other things?
The values, you mean?
Not even the values, but I think we're so programmed to want all of those things.
Yes.
We barely get a chance to breathe to realize what we really want.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, and maybe you've discovered this with some of your clients and everything, is there a bit of figuring out for them as to figure out the important things? When you start that therapy with your clients, do they even know what they want?
No, I don't think a lot of us know what we want. The last time anybody asked us what we wanted is, what do you want to be when you grow up? That, and actually I use that sometimes as a clue, not that you have to be what you said, but what were the qualities that were appealing to you? So if you wanted to be, a doctor, maybe it was because you really wanted to help people and you really wanted to work with people and you really wanted to do something. And now you're doing something in business that doesn't feel aligned with that, right? And I think, we kind of can start that curiosity again to kind of what are the things that I always hold important, right? And so values can be confusing. We hear that word and we're like, what does that actually mean? I like to think of it as qualities that we want to embody, right? So I want to be a person who feels connected to other people. I want to be a person who is patient. I want to be a person, and then I sort of work towards those things, right? Instead of just some abstract idea.
So if I'm on that if only path,
yeah,
and I kind of translate that as being ambition, to step off that path, is there a real conflict there? Because have I stopped being ambitious? And maybe that's expectations from other people, or maybe they're the goalposts that I programmed myself to have. Do you think you're settling in some way?
No, I get that. And
when you stop charging after those if only goals.
And I think great ambition is different than restlessness. So we could have drive and want to go somewhere, but I think we're restless when the goalpost keeps moving and we never feel satisfied, right? And that we're perpetually kind of reaching, and there's like when I get there, I'll be happy. When I get that promotion, or when I finally get that job, or when and so I think it's good to have that ambition and the growth-oriented mindset. But I think before, I talk about how we don't have to do all the things we love because that's almost impossible. But we can get really clear on the things we do want and put energy into those. So sometimes it's more like we can't do it all, but we can still do what we love,
So I identify as being the person who needs this book. 100%. I'm fully charged, chasing all of those next things and all that kind of stuff. How, at a very practical level, will the book help me? Is it a framework? Is it a step-by-step guide?
Sure, yeah.
Is it nice, soft advice? What will the reader get from it?
Well, I think there's a lot of validation that comes first, right? This idea of, okay, this is why, understanding of like some of these tendencies. And then I break it up into love and work and parenting and friendship. And I talk about how this appears in all those areas of our life. So I think there's a lot of probably mirroring and validation you can get and just sort of understanding, right? And feeling seen in some ways, hopefully. That's my hope. And then the second part really dives into that question of, so we might struggle when we feel like this, we might struggle with decisions sometimes because we're like, well, what if I make the wrong decision? Or what if that, I can't go back and, like when you get married, now that's a pretty big decision. Or when you get, take a job that feels like it's going to be a long time. Those are big decisions. And so when we can get in touch with our values and what we really care about, we could make better decisions based on our inner compass versus these external pressures. And then the third part is really about recentering to the present moment. So we can hold that restless feeling at the same time as finding ways to show up more fully in a more present way for ourselves and for the people that we care about. But I guess I would ask you, do you feel like that mindset holds you back in any way?
It's a really good question. Okay, so I'm not a spring chicken, so I'm at the latter stages of a career, whatever. I hate even that idea of it, in all honesty. I look at the young bucks and think, I just want to be fully charged, and I want to be viewed in that way as well, that you're not like coming around the last bend or anything like that.
Sure.
I do appreciate life so much more, like that decision to... get a place in the country. I'm not chasing money or anything. I think all of that's totally empty. But but where I find myself and the bulk of my activity from a time point of view, if you unplug me from what I do work-wise, that's actually quite scary. That validation from having a successful business and winning the next client and this, that, and the other, it's become who you are. But without that, I'm kind of like, okay, that sand is very, very soft under my feet,
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And because it's such a concrete way to, understand our identity by these success measures, it's much easier to say, oh yeah, I'm the person. That's when you first asked me in this interview, like, who am I? Initially you think your job right away, because when people ask you that question, when you meet somebody at a party and they're just like, that's one of the first identifiers we use, right? Because it's easy to reach for. I bet there's a lot more to you that you put into your job that you just don't identify as much, right? But other people would be able to tell you. And so I do often ask people, if someone was going to speak about you at your funeral, what would you want them to say? Right. And I think that's a really good basis for like how we want to live our lives. Right. Because obviously you're a warm person and you're connected to people and you want to hear people's stories. And those are all the beautiful things. Right. So your work might actually just be representative of some of those other things too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I am those things. And it's funny, actually, because you're on the Win Happy podcast and you'll hear some of the questions that I'm going to ask you. Actually, I might even introduce them right now to bounce it off you a little bit, because it kind of relates to this in a way. So you've written the book. There's some great advice for people how to, in a way, have different goalposts, I would think. So my first question, which is one of the questions I ask at the end of the podcast, is what's happiness to you?
What's happiness? So I actually think happiness can be elusive, right? And so we're happy until a kid does something that drives us mad, or we're happy until we don't feel well and we feel sick, or we're happy until, and so it's chasing happiness is tricky, right? And so for me, my goal has become just to feel more alive, right? And I guess you can equate that with happiness. The more I feel present and alive and in touch with my vitality, then the happier and more joyful I am. But that doesn't mean I always have to be having these positive experiences. It just means I have to be present for all the moments, right? And it's impossible to be present all the time, but the times that I am, the times that I engage in sensory activities where I'm like using my hands in the garden, or I'm hugging my children, or I'm playing in the rain with them or in the ocean, and I feel those are the moments where I feel most alive. And to me, those are the things I chase, right?
So when I think about happiness,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of bring it into a work context. So we want to create an environment where there's a number of values that kind of work
Mm-hmm.
towards the state
Yeah.
of, I call it winning happy, because we got one life. You should enjoy it. It should be a positive experience. But in particular, when it's work and everything else, you bring kind of winning, and you have to pay the bills,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
have to progress and all that kind of thing. So when you create that state of happiness, the way I kind of describe it to people, that you might love playing football.
Mm-hmm.
It brings you huge happiness. You're kicking the ball on the pitch with your pals back and forth to each other. It's wonderful. But without the goalposts, it becomes pretty pointless.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get a goal, oh my God, that feeling, it's that dopamine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so boom, ball in the back of the net, you celebrate. And we played lots of football when we were kids, or dancing, or, good at your exams. And the ball in the back of the net was coming first or coming second and getting the prize. So we're kind of programmed in that way. And on the podcast, I ask people, well, what's winning to you? So I'm going to ask you that question and bring it back to your topic. What is winning? What's winning to you?
What's winning to me? I would say, when I think about my own work, I think when I'm connecting with people, and I think this could be in any job, winning is like helping somebody else feel most themselves, right? And so in therapy, in the room, when I see a couple, like when they eliminate me from the process and they turn to each other and really are present with each other, that to me is a win, right? And so for me, it's that connection with somebody and that ability to bring something out in them that they almost didn't notice about themselves, or that I could see is such a special part of them, and to have them acknowledge that or see it too, that to me is a win.
So in a way, if you can find the winning in those things and get your dopamine hit from it, instead of the new car, the new house, the chasing the next thing,
Yes.
which are like programmed wins, but they may not be the right wins for you at all.
Right.
Is that the trick? Is that the magic? Is that what the book is about?
I mean, pretty much. I think that when I described that to you, I was touching into that value for me of like, I really value connecting with people, and I value, and that for me is winning when I'm living in accordance to that value, right? And so it's not about, whether they end up together in the end or not is not my, I don't always get to see that part. So it's not these external benchmarks that come in numbers or yeses or nos. It's really in the feelings. And I think that that's what the main part of the book is not about what we want to achieve, but what we want to feel. And I think even when we take it just from the work standpoint, we can look at our ideal job and say, what about that ideal job? How does that make me feel? If it's just valued by other people, maybe we have to rethink, like, what's the thing that makes you feel excited and makes you feel connected, or makes you feel whatever those feelings are, right? And so sometimes I take people down this journey of like, well, imagine your ideal day at work, right? And what are the feelings that come up? Not just like, what is this goal? What do you want to feel, right?
Sometimes that new house and that new car, they're all brilliant things. And they're not if onlys at all. They were real achievements that
absolutely
make your life better, but that they need to be the right things. I suppose in a way, just try and figure out deeply what matters and what doesn't. And
well, if you get the car and then you're like, oh, but what's my next car? That's where the flag goes up of like, okay, maybe just really like take that car on a drive and notice how it feels, and notice the smell, and open the windows and really be in that moment versus moving on to the next. So it's not there's any negative goal, right, or achievement. It's just a matter of like when we're perpetually moving to the next thing, we're missing out on the thing now.
And how about the characters, which I'm sure this is the way for a lot of people, where You're working for someone else. You're working for an organization. And the minute you go through that door on a Monday morning, it starts, and the whole place is structured around those if-onlys. You know, your objectives and your reviews and the promotion and the ladder, and everything is about that path you need it to be. I remember actually I worked with Guinness, and Guinness had a lot of sales reps, and they were spread out all amongst the country, and the really, really good sales reps were kind of pushed on a path to become sales managers. Now, part of the deal then was that you couldn't be a manager in the place where you lived. So that involved moving to a different territory, so you were the manager there. And then the successful managers became sales directors. And then maybe you become the commercial manager. And it's like a triangle. I used to always talk about a triangle because you're obviously going to have a lot of the reps at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then the more highly charged guys move up, and they're the managers. And then at the very top, there's just a few. And there was one particular guy, and I used to hear the conversations. I was in management there. But I was hear the conversations about this particular guy. Dan was his name. That fella, great rep. But why wouldn't he just take that manager job? It was seen as a bad thing for him. And I remember chatting to him one day, and I said, Dan, you're around here for a long time. You're knocking the sales out of the park. You know, everyone recognizes one of the better reps. There's managers out there who wouldn't lace your boots. I said, Craig, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I love living in Cork. I love my customers. I love the work. I love coming home to the family without having all of that pressure and everything. But it was seen as a black mark against him. And I remember thinking at the time, my God, wouldn't it be wonderful if you think of that triangle again? If everyone at the bottom was so happy.
Yeah.
They were so happy doing what they were doing. And the ones who did feel that, you know, I'd like that bit of responsibility and I'd like to, well, go there because it's good for you and not because it's an expectation or it's someone else's scorecard. And by all means, if you're super at that level, go to the next one, but because it's right for you and it's what you want. But a lot of the time it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I have had clients who get to that next stage and then miss the previous one. Well, I was really happy in that other position. I don't want to be the boss, right?
Yeah. I remember we were interviewing at one point, and one of the guys who came for interview, and he was a bit older than the other character, and I remember him saying to us, if the job doesn't really work out for me at this level, is it okay if I go back to my old job? And of course, that was seen as being a black mark against him. He's not confident enough, and in a way, it was a very practical thing to say.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work out, is that okay? But this is the world we've created, isn't it? It's kind of all supercharged. So your book, Kristen, it's needed, but in one way, it's fighting against culture, isn't it? It's so...
a little bit, yeah. I think it's hard to let go. It's funny because I think about when I decided to leave my job as a writer, as an editor, I was out with my husband and we ran into this acquaintance and they were like, oh, I have the best job for you. And in writing, and it was at a magazine that I very much was a dream job, right? And I was like, well, I just signed up for grad school, but it was very hard for my ego at that moment to let that go. That was the step I was supposed to take, that was the dream. And so in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm prioritizing, I knew I wanted to have kids. I knew I wanted a different lifestyle. And so I had to really get in touch with the things I wanted for myself and let a little bit go of the ego and the external validation that was there, because I knew in the long run, this job was a weekend job. And I was, married just married. And I didn't want to really be working weekends and doing all these things. But in my mind, it was very hard to let go of that opportunity because we are so connected to how we're valued by how our success looks, right? And I love that story about that person you worked with because he was very in touch with what he valued. He valued getting home at the end of the day and feeling happy and living in his town and being with his people, right? And so he was very in touch with that. And I think if we could slow down a little as we're taking those steps, like, is this the next opportunity I want? Do I really want this? It's funny because I often see moms able to do this after they have kids. When they're very in touch with their priorities, they're able to say, oh, I don't want that next level because I still want to keep these things. And so it becomes a little easier to be, but once you're in touch with what it is you really want, then you can make more decisions based on that and not just like what's the expected next thing or what's this external validation. And it doesn't mean you stop striving. I mean, I just took a job at teaching a school at the college nearby me. Like, I'm not stopping doing these new things. I'm just pausing to be like, does this align with my life and how I want it to look in the next chapter,
Is there a male-female issue here, or is it exactly the same, would you think, for both sexes?
I mean, it's not exactly the same, right? Because of just how we're culturally socialized, and men have always been more, as far as we've come, there's still more of an expectation on success. And I think there's a lot of identity tied up for men in jobs and this idea of supporting a family, even though that's not always how it looks now. It doesn't always look like that, but it's still very much part of that socialized part of the male that has been oriented to how are you going to take care of your family, how are you going to be successful, how are you all of those sort of things to live up to.
Is it getting more complicated for women than it used to be, do you think?
Absolutely, because now we have the autonomy to decide. Now I can have anything I want. And so that means I want it all, but now that's almost like too much, right? Now we still have the responsibility. Still a lot of the mental load and the responsibility of parenting does lie on mom. It's just it's still very much that way. And so now she has that responsibility along with whatever career aspirations and doing all. So there's these expectations. So then when we can't kind of live up to all of them, we feel like we're failing in some way because we should be able to do it all, but without the support of, now we have so little support. It used to be that families were there supporting each other as they grew, but now we're isolated and we're doing it all. And then if we can't do it all, we feel like a failure in some way.
So I think the book, it's obviously very good for an individual, who is caught up in this chasing the if-onlys. Mm. But I wonder, is there nearly a part two for parents, for managers, for people in business to embrace a different way of being, whereby we can look at that character, that guy, Dan, and recognize that, no, this is really important. Spending a bit of time with all of your people and coaching them around finding out what really makes them happy and maybe reducing some of the expectation. Yeah, because I think a lot of the time, it probably does. It's probably parents and it's work and this is what success looks like. Maybe as a society, we need to work an awful lot harder to help people and not force those goalposts on everyone, because that realization that you've been chasing if-onlys, does that come late to people?
I think it can. I think that it might come when they realize that that they missed out on something. It can come after the fact. For instance, if you, like we said, they might get to the next step and be like, I just propelled forward and here I am and I want to be back where I long for that person I used to be. And now you feel restless for that person, but it's really how you felt as that person, And so I think sometimes it doesn't come until we've followed that path blindly down. And now we are longing for either a previous version or a different version, so sometimes restlessness is really a message to us that there's some misalignment there from how we want to be living and how we are living. And that doesn't mean how we want to be living based on external standards. Like, I want to have what that person has on social media. No, it means like how we want to be living that's going to honor like who we are at our core, right? And so it can be sort of a signal, if you will, that something's misaligned. And it could just be a passing feeling because of our culture. And sometimes we notice it and sit with it, but sometimes it's a message too.
Yeah. Is there a big symptom? Is there some alarm bell? Is there some trigger for, oh shit, I need to change. I need to read this book. What should people be looking out for? If you're listening to this conversation and saying, well, if A, B, and C is happening to you, maybe you should pick up this book.
Right. I do think like if you find yourself in thoughts of, it's really noticing your language and your thinking. If you're constantly like, well, I'll be happy when, or if only I had that, or questioning your decisions because of fear of regret or worried that you'll go down the wrong path, or, longing for a different version that you were, or even an unlived life that you never had. If you just notice that you're not here, you're in the past, you're in the future, you're in the striving, and you're not actually here, I think that's the biggest indicator.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you've answered some of my key questions. I've one more for you.
Okay.
So for me, we learn as we go. And as time goes on, we try to figure out who are we and what do we like doing and what do we not like doing. And you make choices along the way to get a bit closer to that contentment. You've made some big choices and career changes and everything. What was the biggest choice you had to make along the way and the most difficult, but it was the best one?
In my life?
Yeah.
Biggest choice. I mean, so many choices, right? So many small choices that lead to big things. But I guess probably the biggest choice would be to have children. That would probably be the most life-altering thing that has happened to me, right? And it also, for a restless soul, isn't always the easiest path forward because you now are tethered to a certain way of life and being responsible for people, And so, but of course, when I can be present with them and with them, it's a great joy that I have with them. But that also doesn't mean that I'm always constantly over the moon about parenting. It just means that I know that that's what I wanted and that's what I value. And so when I struggle or when I feel restless, that I come back to that as like, okay, this is what I wanted for my life. And let me be here with it in this moment.
Yeah. Does having kids change your perspective on those goalposts?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a quick way to feel like you understand your priorities and you lose a little bit of the, satisfying everybody else because you sort of only have so much bandwidth. And so this idea of like, okay, this is what's important to me. They also have a very good way of bringing you into the present moment, right? If you're sort of a million miles away, like, okay, mom, we're here, and so it just makes you just in touch with like, what is actually important, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah. Are your kids dreamers?
Oh my gosh, so much. So much dreamers, If you met my son, he is the epitome of, he is me. He is my kindred spirit. And so he's always looking for, new adventures and what he's going to do. And my daughters too, they're big dreamers. Whether that's a blessing or a curse, I don't know. We'll see.
How can people follow you? I spotted some of your social media accounts, but you might just tell the listeners.
Sure. You can follow me on Instagram at Kristen Mosier LMFT, or my website is the same, KristenMosierLMFT.com, on YouTube or anywhere that you want to connect through social media. I love to hear from people. And that's it. I have a Substack called Restless. If you're interested more in, and it's how literature and life, restlessness in literature and life, and I talk about how it shows up in a lot of our literature too. This idea of feeling restless and how it connects to our lives too.
And how can they buy the book?
Anywhere that you buy your books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And on my website, there's some links too.
Yeah, cool. What's your web address?
Kristen Mosier, LMFT.com.
Okay. Is there a next book that we can look forward to?
I'm not sure. It's sort of percolating in my mind, but I'm going to be present with this book for a while and sort of stay in the moment for a little while before I move on to the next. We'll see.
Kristen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much. And
Same.
Yeah, I'll try to be less restless.
You don't have to try and be less, but just noticing, oh, that restlessness is there. Interesting. What do I want to be in this moment, right? So I love your questions. They're so thoughtful, and I appreciate you taking me down this path. It was fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Take it easy.
Okay, you too. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the When Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.